before introducing the crew in the lab. They will be here, and they've got things that they're making, so I look forward to talking with them and with you with them in a moment. So I love that last video, and it strikes me that an important part of the story, the reason we're all here, is because we're an important part of that story, and because we're telling that story, and because we're making it up as we go along. I want to tell you about a piece of the story that we're involved in, maybe that you will be involved in. And I'm going to begin with a short video that tells the creation myth of e-NABle. For those of you who haven't heard about e-NABle, this video has the virtue of being true. And for those of you who have heard about e-NABle, it has the virtue of being short. So we'll just start right there. Oops.
I gotcha.
I came across one about a South African carpenter who had a shop accident and accidentally cut the fingers off one hand and was told that partial hand prosthetics are really expensive and hard to come by. He went to Google and he found his way to Ivan Owen, a puppet maker and prop maker in Washington State, who had made a great big mechanical hand controlled by fingers as a great big puppet for a movie scene. And together they worked for over a year designing this hand, and he explained that they had eventually come upon a way of 3D printing this device, that they had eventually come to recognize that this device could be helpful not just for people who had fingers chopped off in a wood shop, but, for example, for people born missing fingers and hands. And he mentioned that he was putting the design online. YouTube video comments are typically the most demoralizing literary genre in the history of mankind. In this case, there were a number of people who said, this is really great what this guy is doing, I would do that. And so I called their bluff.
Jon created a simple map and left a YouTube comment of his own. Volunteers with 3D printers quickly started to show up. And not just a couple, a lot. So now, if someone like Lucy needs a hand, her family can check Jon's map and find someone near them who can make it. In other words,
it worked.
So, as you can see, I could just play videos. But as you can see, these devices are not your traditional medical grade prosthetics. In fact, prosthetists look at these and say, but those are like toys. And the kids look at them and they say, but those are like toys. And they love them. They are, as functional devices, they are substantially better than nothing. As ego boosters, they are, I think, better than anything. And this basically has become the story of how a YouTube video comment becomes a global movement. On day one, when I made that comment and I made this map, you know, it was sort of like becoming pregnant. A half hour of indulgence, of self-indulgence. The next thing you know, you're responsible for all these children. And while I was making it up at the time, I'm quite proud of the fact that I got this sentence right when it was a lie. I said, we are, and it was a network of one, we are a global volunteer assistive technology network built on an infrastructure of electronic communications, 3D printing, and goodwill. And I think that's a really powerful recipe, and it's one that is continuing to ramify as we go. There are now 9,000 members in the Google Plus community that we started when people said, now what do we do? There are 2 or 3 nonprofit foundations, including the e-NABle Community Foundation, which I founded but have now stepped down from. There are over 50 websites and Google and Facebook groups around the world, all flying the e-NABle banner. And in every country, there's another story to tell. I just so happened to get this story a few weeks ago when I was at a conference in San Diego, when I bumped into Eric Dequeese, the young man in the middle, a medical student who, it turns out, has established a walk-in clinic in the capital of Paraguay, Asunción, and he's got 8 full-time employees. He managed to get funding, even though when I spoke to him 6 months ago, he was on the verge of burnout. And they've developed a really interesting business model in which When someone needs a hand, there's a block party, and all of the neighbors chip in to help pay for the hand, and now there's a support network all around it. This is just one story in one city, in one place. But there are stories like this all over the place, and I call this e-NABle dark matter. We have a project that we organized in Haiti. Now, we went down to Haiti with our wrist-activated superhero hands and discovered that, in fact, most of the amputees in Haiti have no wrists, no elbows. And, by the way, deformity is bad juju. And so what they really wanted, not what we brought them, but is what they are now getting, which are 3D printed cosmetic hands, which obviously are what this young woman needs and what many more are going to get. The point is that every place is different, and the beauty of a global network of volunteers using open source technologies and putting it out there is that every place gets to develop their own solution and gets to work with other people all over the world to do it. Now, that was a zero moving part Haiti hand that Eddie had. But in fact, Skip Metz, one of the volunteers in the lab, and several other volunteers in the lab have been working on a device which is considerably simpler than the e-NABle hands that we developed previously, but has one moving part and may actually hit a sweet spot because we can make it as cosmetic as we want, and yet it has quite a bit of functionality.
Never sleeps. Here's a reminder, because that is a really good, strong grip. Do it again. Now shake that bottle. Shake it. Pound that bottle on the table. It's going nowhere.
No one said we couldn't have fun while we were doing it. So this is hot off the presses. Remember, I said that we're making it up as we go along. This is one version now of what will be a cosmetic covered Haiti arm, as we're calling it, in which you'll be able to take your good arm and adjust it to whatever angle you want, and you'll be able to just give it whatever you want it to hold, and it will be, I think, substantially better than nothing, and quite adaptable. We have a team that's working on a second locking elbow and a harness, and all of this is going to become very cheap, very easy, and very available around the world. There's still a lot of work to do, and I'm just going to take a flyer here, but someone in this audience is going to end up volunteering and working with us. But that's how it goes. Because, as you may have seen in 2 weeks ago, the Democrat and Chronicle, here we are. Our lab at RIT is going strong. Featured on this particular page are Silvana Arteaga, who is here from Bolivia, Jerry Jiwei, who is here from China on a fellowship with the State Department. Many others, including Peregrine Hawthorne, who is going to wave his hand, which he has designed. So you see, these kids not only feel like superheroes, they become superheroes, like Iron Man, who are redesigning themselves. And by the way, 9-year-old Andrew, who on his own developed, with modeling clay, a fork holder, which we've now 3D modeled, and also exists with lots of extensions for holding playing cards and other things. There it is. These devices are available for your perusal. Because they are 3D designs distributable through a global network of volunteers, they become available to everyone, everywhere. And if they don't meet your needs, they become modifiable by everyone, everywhere. So while the headline in the online version of this article said growing pains at RIT e-NABle, and we have indeed lost our funding from the e-NABle Community Foundation, and we are indeed talking to people in this room who will probably be able to work out our next funding model. This is going very strong, and the lab is filled with a number of very creative, very excited volunteers who are really doing something quite special. But I want to tell you where this is going, right? The title of this talk was E-NABling Connected Humanitarians. And here's just a transitional story about a kid at South by Southwest who was born with no legs and one arm, but she was fascinated by this volunteer's e-NABle hand. And so what the heck, we put it on her little stump, and you can see her warming up and getting excited, and the next thing you know, she too is a superhero, and the volunteer, by the way, had one of these wonderful meaning experiences, which is what keeps us going. And so it's really a synergistic collaboration, right? This is not charity. This is the most rewarding thing most of us have ever done, but it's really meaningful. And it's not just about 3D printing those things. This kid doesn't really need an arm to fit onto her arm. She needs a robotic arm that will fit onto her motorized wheelchair with which she's already wheeling around, adjusting the height, very confident. I look forward to being in a motorized wheelchair if I live so long and be lucky enough, and I expect it to be augmented with all sorts of technologies that high school kids in robotics classes are going to be making available to a global network of volunteers. There's an organization that was inspired by e-NABle called Tikkun Olam Makers, and they're doing assistive technology hackathons all over the world now. They will bring together 150 people for 72 hours, put them into teams with need knowers, that is, recipients or people who have a problem that needs solution solving. And as you can see, they're not just using 3D printers, although they are using 3D printers and making enabled devices. They're using all of the tools and all of the knowledge available to a global network of makers and humanitarians. Now, they're developing all of these cool solutions. What they don't have right now is a global network of volunteers who can fabricate and disseminate them, but wait a minute, that's what e-NABle does. And for that matter, there's another organization with which we are now collaborating called Arogya Seva. This is the world we live in. There is an organization that has 25,000 medical volunteers. Most of them Indians in India, but they have a clinic in Phoenix. They're going to have a facility in Syracuse. They have something in Rwanda, and we have some RIT students. We're taking a pilot arm to Rwanda this January. And Arogya Seva has 35,000 doctors who are donating anywhere from an hour a week to their entire lives to the delivery of free medical care to underserved populations around the world. Just suppose that they were able to get new solutions from Tom Global and from e-NABle and from a global network of connected humanitarians. And in fact, that's the emerging vision. It's not that businesses and governments and non-governmental organizations don't work. Global levels of violence, of poverty, of disability are at record lows these days. But all of these organizations are imperfect. They're always going to have some places that they can't serve, and those are the places where connected humanitarians, volunteers who are embodying a caring economy, not a sharing economy and not a commercial economy, can make a real difference. There's an emerging vision, and with the organizations I've mentioned, we're beginning to develop something called connectedhumanitarians.org, which will, I think, have proven that e-NABle was a great prototype for something even bigger. We will be a globalized, globally mobilized, innovative, caring network of volunteers. We have to figure out how to bring all of this together without institutionalizing it, but still coordinating it. As I've said, this is the most rewarding work imaginable if we can figure it out. I want some of you to help us figure it out. And I'll suggest that in a world in which energy may become free and in which robots do all the heavy lifting, this vision, making it real and being a part of it, is a worthy goal for the 21st century. I hope you'll help. Thank you very much.